Good evening. We'll now return to open session. There are no announcements or reportable action taken in closed session. First, I'm going to ask for a board member to please make a motion to approve the agenda. But first, I'd like to ask that we include a public comment on items not on the agenda just after item 9, which will just be within 5 minutes from now, if that. If another individual or community member arrives expecting to have that item in the time that we expect, around 8 p.m., we'll offer that as well. So I'm going to ask, can I please ask for a motion to approve the agenda, including time limits, with a public comment on items not on the agenda after item 9. That was a mouthful. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Give me a second.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you. I thought, oh, you're right. Thank you. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So that motion has passed. And now what we're going to do, I need to ask if I could have a volunteer. I did it last time. I'll just mention that. A board member or student trustee to read over the meeting norms, and then that same person will describe whether, somebody. Oh, okay. Make a note of as. What do you, grows and glows, or whatever it is you call it? I call it thorns and roses, but whatever. So you're going to do it, or?
Well, does anyone want to do it? Student trustees?
Oh, I think yes. You could do
Jump
it.
Right up.
And you know what we'll do? If you have to leave to go do your homework, like you often do around 7:30, we could even stop for a moment. You could report out, or we'll do the
3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So the board will come prepared to be fully present and engaged, deliberate effectively, and listen openly without interrupting, work collaboratively and build toward consensus, maintain perspective with a sense of humor, not repeat each other or ourselves, not have side conversations, give full attention to the proceedings, no cell phone use, focus on best interest of all students, commit to no surprises.
Great, thank you very much. So let me take a look here. So now we're moving on to the consent agenda item. And first I'll ask if there's any public comment on the consent agenda itself. Okay, seeing none, now I would like to ask if there's any trustee that would like any item on the consent agenda to be removed for separate deliberation and consideration. No? Okay, very good. In that case, can I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That passed. And now's the time I would like to open up public comment for items not on the agenda. And I will read a little bit of a description here. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and provides this time for members of the audience to address the board on any school-related matter not on the agenda. The board can take no action at this time. Speakers are requested to identify themselves prior to addressing the board and will be heard up to 3 minutes. The presiding officer of the board shall determine, based on time constraints of the board, whether some time less than 3 minutes shall be allocated to the individual. And I'm understanding there's a Mr. Lang that needs to leave right away, so you'd like to come now and provide public comment. Thank you. And one moment, please.
I'm going to do it. She doesn't have it up. I'll do it myself.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Members of the board, staff, fellow citizens of Marin County, my name is Christopher Lang. I'd like to thank the board for prioritizing the public comment at this time, changing the agenda, because I feel that based on my experience at Fairfax, the Planning Commission, et cetera, and the town council, is that having public comment much later in the meeting is sort of stifling. If someone comes in and have an interesting idea or a complaint, making them wait through 2 hours of a meeting seems a bit excessive to me personally. So in Fairfax, we usually have public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and then of course you have to enforce time limits, etc. Now, I didn't really have time to prepare my remarks for this display this night because I actually came here to protest the parcel tax as it stands. But the reason I want to speak to you about a non-agenda item is, over the years I've noticed in the newspaper, we're in IJ, there's been a lot of talk about neighbors being unhappy with students parking in their private areas or residential areas adjacent to the school. And it always kind of amuses me because I'm the founder of the Marin County Bike Coalition. Tonight I'm representing our little bike club in Fairfax called Velo Club Fairfax. I'm not affiliated with the Bike Coalition anymore. And it always amuses me because it seems like the solution is so easy, so simple. If we just encourage more students to ride their bicycles to school, it would alleviate some of that parking pressure in the residential neighborhoods adjacent to the school. So my request this evening is, I know you're not going to take action, that's fine. And it's because this has been going on for quite some time. And there's also some infrastructure barriers around the school that are not conducive to bicycling, as well as markings and lane striping. There's all sorts of little devil in the details, infrastructure details at minuscule cost that would make the campus much more bicycle friendly. My main vision that I have is to have a bicycle parking area front and center, not back in some place where no one sees it, with some really nice racks and a little video monitor or staff designated to keep an eye on it. We've done that successfully in Fairfax, the Safe Routes to Schools program. In its first year back at Manor School, as I recall, increased bike riding by 37%. The first go-around that we really tried. And it seems to me Redwood is right for this kind of thing. And Drake has a pretty good bike corral. They've had pretty good turnout for people riding their bikes. My son went there, rode his bike there every day. My daughter rode her bike there until someone ran her off the road up in Fairfax. So the bottom line is, our goal is to make it safe to get to school and secure when they get to school. Bike parking is really key. Like I said, the devil's in the details. So my request tonight, board members and staff, is for you to designate a staff person that I could work with so I can give you the input. I don't feel it's right for me to come up with this huge blueprint for your facility and have to do all this work to familiarize myself with your campus. There's a bunch of good innovative ideas and details I'd like to go over, but I need to work with someone who knows the territory so I can say, what about this over here? And they'll say, oh yeah, da-da-da.
Thank you.
So that's my goal.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Contact me later.
Thank you. And we have your contact information here, and I'm able to read it, so thank you. So I wanted to double check.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much for letting me speak now.
No, absolutely. Thank you for your comment. So the next item on the agenda, we have student trustee reports. And who would like to go first? How about Charlotte?
Okay, so as we're in late November, we're kicking off to finals week since Thanksgiving is coming. As soon as we get back to school, it's really finals time. We have 1 week and then finals. The staff just did a big sort of getting to know each other thing. They did a Thanksgiving potluck last Wednesday. Everyone cooked, they brought a little something, and it was really nice. The fire alarm only went off once, but it was a really nice event. CEC is planning the next community event. It's going to be on December 3rd, and it is a holiday just party. They're brainstorming some sort of drive. They haven't put a label on it yet, but it's probably going to be a food drive or a clothing drive or some sort of idea so people can donate things and we can give it to those in need during the holiday season. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maddie.
First off, I'd like to congratulate our girls water polo for winning NCS. So they're going on to state. So we're all very excited for them. And then also at Drake, our PR has started doing presentations in the freshman, sophomore social issues classes. So that's something they do every other year when those students have social issues. And as well as that, our SOAR just finished their microaggressions presentations also within those classes. And that went over very well. And we found it went over a lot better than when we did those presentations on the first day of school to everyone, but doing them in the context of a social issues class students were a lot more receptive to what the students were saying. And then also, there has been an effort at Drake to combine our leadership classes more and have them work together. So that's our ASB leadership and then our peer resource and our SOAR. So we've created a group. They're calling themselves the PSA, which I thought was very clever. So they're going to be working together and launching projects, and they want to have videos on our Pirate TV and also be doing joint projects. So then the other thing is we had a student senate last Wednesday during tutorial. And during that, we talked a lot about the new plan for SLCs at Drake. So this was a time when students were able to have discussions about their ideas about moving forwards with SLCs and as well as their concerns for what's going to happen to SLCs. So the discussion was supposed to mostly focus on if electives should be a part of SLCs, but because the administration does not have a plan exactly for how SLCs are going to work, it was hard for students to, they wanted to give more input, but it was hard for them to know exactly what to give. And there was just a general sense of confusion and anxiety about the process within students because they don't really know what's going to happen because there isn't a plan yet of what's going to happen. And then also, to speak frankly, while the discussion was supposed to be focused on moving forward with restructuring the SLCs, a lot of students kept bringing it back to their complaints about the current SLCs. And the students that were complaining about the current SLCs were only students from the TLC SLC. There were not any students who specifically complained about Rock or Da Vinci. Those students specifically cited they felt underprepared in their English classes going into junior year. And that those complaints are illustrated in the rest of the school, who there are many people who feel that they were underprepared for junior year, but those students are more concentrated in TLC than they are in Rock or Da Vinci. So while the administration is tackling the problem of inequity in the SLCs, in my opinion, I wonder if perhaps just tackling the problems in the TLC SLC would be a better approach. Thank you.
Just got a follow-up on that. So it sounds like, and I sympathize with your frustration, but when you redesign something, it can take a while, right? And getting input from various stakeholders. Was it clear at the meeting that when the SLCs are redesigned, they will all have similar rigor and accountability? Has that been clear from the start?
Yes, that's definitely the goal, but I think the problem is no one knows how we're going to achieve that goal. So then if that goal will actually be achieved, no one knows. So that is something we want to do, but we also, and the whole school agrees on this, want to preserve the uniqueness of each SLC, but then also make them equal. And I think finding a way to do that is going to be hard.
Thank you, Maddie.
Actually, Maddie, may I just ask you, what SLC were you in?
I was in Rock.
Rock?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So do you want to provide an update on Tam High? Kara?
It's not on.
You should talk really loud.
Okay. Do you want this doesn't matter for the camera.
He's shaking his head like it's okay.
It's okay.
Okay. So actually right now at TAM, I think the girls water polo is just finishing up their first round of state or NorCal finals, which is exciting. And as of
Miles of conductor.
And as of at 6, Boosters was saying that, so we have 2 NorCal games home today. Water polo started at 5, girls water polo, who actually just won NCS last week. Boosters is going to pay the admissions to the volleyball game for students if you go to the water polo game. So at 6, the girls water polo is playing in the NorCal Championships. It's the first time our volleyball program has ever qualified for NorCal, ever. It was the first time that they got to MCALs in over 12 years, the MCAL playoffs, so that was super exciting. Plus tennis, girls tennis won NCS as well last year and hosted the individual NCS finals today. Leadership is collaborating with Willow Creek and MLK, similar to the way the TAM News program has in past years, helping them each school plan a dance, trying to help the 8th graders see what the leadership program is about and ways you can get involved as a way to hopefully increase diversity along the road within our leadership program, which is primarily Mill Valley students. Leadership is also starting our student senate. The bylaws were written last year by students, kind of modeled after activities Drake's as a big example, trying to figure out ways to get more student voice, especially there's talk of moving leadership into the school day, which would eliminate drama and aim students from taking leadership. So it's a way to kind of get more diverse student opinions in there, no matter if you're able to take the class or not. In addition to that, kind of on the whole idea of leadership, kind of talking as a voice, they actually 10 leadership students created a presentation for one of our assistant principals who's in charge of scheduling, because everyone thought the scheduling at TAM was kind of a mess this year with all new APs, that they presented kind of their opinions, and especially with the administration proposing a cap on 2 AP honors per student, they voiced their opinions on that, which I thought was beneficial. And our CTE Dance-a-thon, our annual fundraiser, according to a couple of the students, raised over almost $14,000 this year.
14,000.
That's what they told me, so.
There might be an extra zero there. But
that's what I was thinking, but they did well, and it was much better. The past 2 years have been kind of weak on their fundraising, and this year they think that it's kind of their energy back, so they were excited about that.
That's great. Maybe they did get 14,000. Oh, maybe they did, yeah. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
So what was the genesis of the proposal of the capping 2 honors or APs, and what was the general reaction? Not like specific complaints, but general
just
reaction.
in the future, administration was talking about as a way to kind of, the whole achievement gap at TAM is kind of a problem that, you have just like the diverse between if you're taking AP and honors, if you're on that track, versus if you're taking your non-AP honors classes, especially with English and mainly English, you kind of lose half the student population. It kind of gets very split. So the idea with taking, my understanding, I'm not 100% sure, but my understanding, I think the general consensus with leadership is that you're supposed to take the 2 APs or honors that you're most interested in. So rather than taking like 5 in your schedule, it would kind of keep kind of the general population together in classes, plus helping mental health so you're not overdoing yourself. Is kind of my understanding. It hasn't been officially proposed to the community. I think it was just shown to leadership like, hey, this is something we're thinking about. And so leadership went back, especially talking about how like excluding continuation courses. So like, for example, AP Calc and AP Spanish are classes that like that's the only left offered at that level that like you don't want to exclude those kids just because they got to that level. They can't take, let's say, AP European history. So we're kind of trying to figure out how that would actually play out. I don't think it's on the books for next year, but I think it's something down the line that they're looking at.
Thank you. I think you're up, Lauren.
Okay. Redwood SOAR students have been doing anti-racism presentations in a variety of classes, just among teachers that requested them. So that's mostly English, world language, and social studies classes, and I'd say mostly underclassmen. And SOAR also held a showing of the movie The Hate U Give on Friday night, and they organized a discussion about race after, and I think maybe 3 or 4 leadership students went to that and shared it out in class today and said it was really successful, and they actually had a good turnout. So that went well, and SOAR's just been more active generally since becoming a class this year. The annual Turkey Bowl dodgeball tournament was canceled because of a lack of participation, but leadership is organizing a staff versus students 2-hand touch football game on Friday at lunch. And already they've gotten overwhelming participation from teachers and students for that. So people are getting ready for that. And the Powder Puff game is always really successful. The junior and senior girls, so they're sort of trying to replicate that. Our homecoming dance was officially rescheduled as a winter formal, so that's going to be held January 24th. And leadership is already coming up with some fun ideas, like potentially a snow day on campus the day of, which would be really fun. Site Council approved a new format for open house, just in response to teacher and parent feedback. So now it's going to be more like the course workshops that we hold in the spring. So parents can sign up. We're not totally sure of the process yet, but you can sign up for classes beforehand and then just show up in those instead of sort of the more open format where you just go up to teachers. Because that was a lot of the complaints that we were receiving, is that teachers didn't really like that format and parents didn't like it either because they didn't really get the chance to talk to teachers or just really learn about the course. So the new open house will be held January 30th, along with the silent auction that the leadership class puts on. And that's all.
Thank you very much. Now we will move on to trustee considerations. And I'm wondering if the audience would mind, can I have a show of hands of people that are here for the vaping presentation? Okay, thank you. That just gives me an idea in case some of you want to provide public comment with the timing. So what we're going to do is I'm first going to ask Wes Cedros to the podium, who's going to provide the board with the presentation. I'll ask my fellow trustees, since we know we have potential for a number of public comments, that we limit our discussion to more clarifying questions, getting whatever information we need. And if it's all right with you, Wes, can we do that throughout your presentation? Is that okay? And then, so that way we can quickly go to public comment, hear comments from the community, and then we'll come back, and if we have any more discussion or follow-on questions as a result of those comments, we'll do it that way. Does that make sense? Sometimes we spend a lot of time on both ends, but I think this will make it more streamlined. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. And she's giving you 3 minutes, it looks like. Yeah. Sorry, Wes.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that alleviates or increases my anxiety.
Yeah, I don't know. No. I know you can do it.
There we go.
Okay, great. Is that on?
1 second.
Okay.
There we go.
It's not working.
Okay, great. So just a very brief overview of what I'm going to go over this evening is kind of what we're looking for, and that's really just what do vape devices look like, just to kind of level set as to what we're dealing with in the schools and out in the community. The scope of the issue will be some statistics about current use, our challenges that we're facing in taking on this public health issue. How we are addressing the issue, that's kind of the heart of the presentation, and considerations going forward. So these devices are kind of what we're talking about. They atomize or aerosolize a liquid compound electronically and deliver it to the lungs. And that can be flavored juices that contain no nicotine or THC, or predominantly containing nicotine, and they can also be pods, can be sold or created that contain THC. So that is what we're dealing with. Lifetime use, this is from our 2017-18 California Healthy Kids Survey. We are scheduled to administer our next check survey this spring. So we'll have new data around August when we get that back from WestEd, and we'll update that accordingly. So I've just placed the state averages and our local data. In 9th grade, you can see that statewide, about 34% of 9th graders use electronic cigarettes or other vaping devices. In our schools, we're at 39%. Likewise, a 5% difference between the state and local numbers in grade 11. So we're consistently higher by about 5%. Non-traditional, those are our alternative schools. So in our case, Canascal and San Andreas. Those rates are significantly higher, both in overall usage and it's pretty consistently higher in the other measures. And we wrote one of our TUHSD grants specifically to address that. I would say before I move on, the lifetime use, that includes both our experimenters, so kids who've tried it once and so they tried it, as well as our frequent users or students who are addicted to nicotine or vaping THC. Current use, and on the Healthy Kids Survey, that's defined as use within the past 30 days. Again, we're 4 to 5% higher than the state average in both 9th grade and 11th grade. We are not quite double, but about 2/3 higher in our non-traditional student populations. And on this slide and the next one where I show our use on campus, I would just say that this makes a case for using the stats to strengthen our norms rather than focusing exclusively on changing norms, or we would do in some cases. Because if we flip that around, and this is not to minimize the issue, because we know that the significance of an issue is not necessarily related to prevalence. There can be very significant issues that have low prevalence. But what that also says, if you look at it the other way, is that 76% of our 9th graders are not currently using, and 67% of our 11th graders are not currently using. And I think that's important messaging when we're talking about norms for our youth, getting that voice out there that not the majority, it's not the majority of students who are using in the past 30 days, or who are using, certainly when we look at the on-campus usage, they're using, and to leverage that in our prevention and education, especially when we look at peer-to-peer education, I think is important. On-campus use, statewide, 10% and 13% of students were using at school in the past 30 days, and in our district it was 2 or 3% higher than that. So we're hovering right around the statewide norms. And then again, to reframe it, 87 and 85% of our 9th and 11th graders respectively are not using the devices at school.
And so then that represents about half of the current use, right? Each one of those categories is about half the current use.
Correct.
So majority is happening at home or outside of school.
Correct. And here's where I think we leverage our prevention and education, especially through our TUHSD work, which is tobacco use prevention and education. And there's a couple of grants that we have that I'll explain a little bit later. And I think this is also a good time to introduce John Hirsch, social studies teacher and social issues teacher and TUHSD coordinator at Redwood, who I asked to join me because he can give some more detailed answers about what's happening in the classroom, and he's probably be embarrassed by this, but he's kind of our standard as far as tobacco use prevention education in the district. And if you have a chance to look up his video on KPIX, I would encourage you to do that. I know. But John represents some of the really good work that we're able to do at the school sites. Perception of harm is the question on the Healthy Kids Survey is phrased as how much do people risk harming themselves when they do the following? And so the first question is how much do they harm themselves when they occasionally use e-cigarettes or vaping device compared to smoking cigarettes? And this is where we really have to change norms. for occasionally, both 9th and 11th graders, 38% of them said that there's little to no harm in using them occasionally. When we move up to using the devices several times a day, students, 16% and 15% of 9th graders and 11th graders respectively said there's little to no harm. So students are getting the message that long-term or sustained use is harmful, regardless of whether it's delivered in a traditional cigarette or an e-cigarette or vaping device. But the occasional use is really what we're targeting with our prevention and education, and finding those students who are already addicted is the focus of our cessation efforts.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about why the use and the perception of harm is, so why the use is greater at the non-traditional schools and the perception of harm is not, they don't think it's as harmful as non-traditional schools?
They don't think it's as harmful.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
you have to ask which comes first, the chicken or the egg. You know, is the
Can you
use-
get up to the microphone, please?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. Thanks.
Sorry.
No problem.
I think what you have to ask yourself is the use preceding the perception of harm in the sense, like, is the perception of harm self-talk, denial? I want to use this, so it's fine, so I will convince myself that it's fine, and maybe it's a little bit of both. I think the education component has been a little bit delayed getting to the non-traditional schools too. I think that's part of it. So I think you're dealing with a lot of factors. But just in response to what Wes said before, there is, in the study that I did of all the students who were caught using on campus, there is a strong correlation of perception of harm with frequency of use. So the students that are using more naturally perceive it to be less harmful, but it's hard to tell which came first.
I may add something to that. Students at non-traditional schools, just because they're there, might have just more issues. Like I know at Tamalpais we've got a lot of kids with emotional issues. They see one of our few therapists at school, and sometimes the drug use might be a coping mechanism for them. And maybe neglecting to look at the data might just be them wanting to, like he said, don't want to see the facts. They don't want to see that their coping mechanism is not good for them.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I've seen a lot of this happen at the non-traditional schools. With our one bathroom, that's where it usually happens. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback.
Thank you, Charlotte. And Cynthia, I will also say, I don't get into it too much in this report, but the marketing and social media presence of these devices is also directly targeting our youth.
Sure.
And so I think that increases or masks the seriousness of addiction disease. Access, and I think here is where we leverage our coalitions and our political leaders, students, and I think rightly so. I just anecdotally talking to students backs up that in 84% and 87% of 9th and 11th graders respectively view obtaining cigarettes and e-cigarettes is very easy. I'm sure John could go on and on. I know students order them from Amazon to the Amazon drop, pick them up, it doesn't even go to the house, get them from older brothers or sisters or friends, or simply go in and buy them themselves and don't get. stopped at the store. And our coalitions are doing a lot of work in that area. So making it just more difficult to obtain. Some of our local governments are working with regulators to make the flavored tobacco and pods and advertising less appealing.
Wes, sorry, just
Yeah, no, absolutely.
one quick question. I find it interesting that the non-traditional group who typically use more have a more difficult time accessing it.
Yeah. I don't know. If you're asking for a theory, based on what we know from usage among socioeconomic, in socioeconomic strata, students of lower SES tend not to use the vaping devices at the same higher rates. We have a higher rate of free and reduced lunch or low SES students at our non-traditional schools, and therefore the perception may be that they're more difficult to obtain, and that might be cost or proximity to outlets. But I have nothing to back that up. That's I saw that too, and I thought that was curious. Challenges, just to reiterate, the access that you have to these devices, the size and portability inhibits detection and being able to spot these. Social media and targeted marketing make them very appealing to youth, and the perception of harm or lack of harm is something that we are battling. I think now is a good time to bring in the grand jury recommendations for May 2019, since as a district we need to respond to that, and use that as to kind of structure the rest of my presentation. Two recommendations in particular applied to whole district work. The first one, recommendation one, was that school districts should increase initiatives and provide students, parents, and the community with more information and support on vaping prevention and cessation. And the initiatives should include digital and social media content, including materials for middle and high schools. And then the second, which was the recommendation 4, was that each school district should install vaping detectors in schools, in school bathrooms, and other areas where vaping frequently occurs. Leading into that, especially with our response to the R1, I think it is a good time to explain our tobacco use and prevention grants. We have 2. The first are TUPE funds through MCOE, and that's $25,000 a year. And that money comes to us directly from MCOE, and it provides for TUPE site coordinators at every site. It covers sub-costs for countywide trainings, vaping prevention education with peer leaders, school-wide prevention activities, and classroom workshops for all 9th graders. The second TUPE grant is one that we were just received word that we were awarded at the end of the summer. This is a grant that we wrote to the California Department of Education, and we were lucky enough to secure it for $674,000 over 3 years. This is a health disparities grant, and as such, we wrote it to focus on increasing services and supports for our LGBTQ+ students, our African American and Latinx students, and I neglected to say our students in non-traditional schools. That should be up there as well. They were written into the grant. Now, that does not mean that we believe that those students should be targeted or have any larger particular usage, but those students traditionally face bigger disparities in health outcomes over the course of their lives. And so this grant is written specifically to address that. So in order to use those grant funds with that purpose in mind, we're expanding our partnership with the Marin City Health and Wellness Center as well as the SPAR Center, who works directly with our LGBTQ+ students. It's allowed us to greatly expand, almost double our partnership with Huckleberry Youth Services, who provide education and cessation for both drugs and alcohol and vaping. It offsets the cost of Jessica Colvin, our wellness director, and provides materials and training. And that's equally distributed over 3 years. So then back to the grand jury recommendations. We're focusing on 3 things: prevention, intervention, and education. All staff help identify students who need help. Our campus supervisors patrol the bathrooms and school grounds. Teachers and counselors refer students to our cessation services. Administrators are in charge of determining consequences and referring students for support. And then our frontline staff are our 2P coordinators, wellness staff, and counselors who are providing support for students. Students are referring their friends, themselves and their friends at very high rates to our wellness centers, which is good to see. Our 2P coordinators, as well as our social issues teachers, wellness staff, and community partners that I named earlier, especially Huckleberry and BACR, are providing education and cessation services. Parents are increasingly referring their students for cessation help, reaching out to administrators or counselors, and our community coalitions are working to change the community norms and limit youth access.
Wes?
Yeah.
I have a quick question. It's twofold, having to do with the intervention. And this is something I actually mentioned to the superintendent, that I've heard from time to time teachers or administrators comment that it has gotten more difficult to actually intervene because you don't see a student vaping. It's not like when you could actually see somebody and smell the smoke. And so there was that concern that we weren't able to intervene as easily and help the students. Then the other flip side of that, I was going to ask you, have you seen a shift? Because I think we've all noticed the broad and robust campaign every time you turn on the TV, educating the general public about the dangers of vaping, and so I think that at least hits a lot of the parents. So it's kind of on one hand, I guess what I'm asking is that it's hard, must be harder to intervene, I'm assuming, but have you seen even a shift in any of this data over the last few months as a result, that possibly could be linked to the increased awareness in the community from the media campaign?
I think we'll know better at the end of next summer when we have some update in our California Health Kids Survey data, because that will cover
really
the
tell
last
us.
2 years.
Right.
Anecdotally.
Anecdotally, yeah.
Anecdotally.
I'd love to hear any anecdotal.
Coordinated this, so we'll
Yeah.
see if our answers are consistent. But I am hearing that with youth, the press about the recent lung disease is having an effect.
Yeah.
Some of the newness has worn off in regards to the devices, but our ability to detect them, I think is still, that's a problem. I mean, it's almost impossible if a student, if a person is being very deliberate. It's very difficult to see. What were you going to say, John?
Oh, a couple things. First, just to echo Wes's point, anecdotally, I absolutely agree. My peer educator team at Redwood has reported to me on a couple of different occasions that they're noticing it less among their friends. And a couple of other juniors and seniors who I happen to have close relationships with have reported that a lot of their friends are trying to stop now. Now, that's going in a few different directions. There's many that are just trying to stop. There are many that are also trying to switch to the Zyn and Snoo pouches, which are nicotine pouches, as a kind of step off. Some are trying to quit cold turkey, and others are, and this wouldn't necessarily fall in exactly the same category, but there is an increase in off-campus cigarette smoking. That kids have started to transition to that to some degree too.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. let's see. Okay, so speaking a little more specifically about the recommendations for the first grand jury recommendation, we are using evidence-based education and prevention based on the harm reduction model. And specifically, some of the materials that we use are based on the Stanford Tobacco Prevention Toolkit. We use a brief intervention model based on the change model for public health, where it's through questioning, and John can speak more to that, and peer education, which has strong support in the literature for working in cases like this. We do provide one-to-one and small group cessation services, which are effective, and education awareness opportunities for parents, guardians in the community. Specifically for teachers, parents in the community, which was mentioned in the grand jury recommendation, lunch and learn sessions based on the Stanford Toolkit with one of our providers, Jazzy Garrity, who also works with the coalition, and trainings at MCOE. For parents and guardians, we have a version of our Escape the Vape program. And last year those events were at Redwood and Tam, although invitations were sent to all, and we'll be having more of those this year. Our wellness website has a wealth of information, as well as the Wellness Wave newsletter, which comes out every 6 weeks or so. And we are sending parent-guardian informational email messages when things come up. Interventions for students, cessation services, as I mentioned, BACR and Huckleberry provide those services, or the bulk of those services. All ninth graders receive a 1-hour presentation based on the Stanford Toolkit. Just Say No is our substance use abuse workshops, and those are given monthly on campus for students who are caught with substances or using on campus. And more recently, our Escape the Vape prevention and education workshops are for students who are caught vaping on campus. The first time a student is caught is done in lieu of suspension, focusing rather on education rather than a punitive measure. And John has a hand in running those programs. Did you want to say a little bit about them?
Yeah, and I can answer any questions that anyone has. Through the team of Lysandra White, who's our assistant principal, who's the point person on the TUPE program at Redwood, and Jennifer Kennybaum and Sarah Arthur with our wellness center. When we strategized for this, when I became the TUPE coordinator back officially it was I think November of 2017, but we really started getting things rolling in the early spring of 2018, and we decided that we were going to do 2 30-minute prevention sessions during lunch, limit the problems with getting to school before, or what you have to do after school. So we decided to do it at lunch, 2 30-minute sessions. Now it's on a Monday and 2 days later on a Wednesday. That I've got some really interesting data that I can share on that if anyone is interested, from some anonymous follow-up surveys. We've had some real success with that, even more than I had hoped for. All the 9th graders at Redwood receive, out of last year and this year, every single social issues class gets a presentation from my peer educator team. And and I can speak to the components of that if anyone wants me to. One of the things I wanted to mention was following up on something that Wes said before. Is that me? Am I doing that? No? Okay. Just want to make sure.
I think it's Corbett in the back.
Okay. That figures.
Oh, no. No, maybe I don't know.
Wes emphasized the importance of the number of kids that aren't. And that's actually what we believe to be a very strong component of our prevention education program, because the freshmen have a really skewed perception of how many of their peers are. When asked to estimate the percentage of their peers that use, they estimate it between 60 and 70% because of the closure effect, because they notice every time someone is. right? And they don't notice every time someone's not. So they assume, okay, I saw this, I saw person A, I saw person B, I saw person G, and I saw person Z using it, so everyone in between probably is too. But when we show them the actual stats, we ask them as part of the presentation, raise your hand, how many, 25%, 50%, 75%, and then when we show them the actual numbers, it changes their decision-making process. It changes it from, well, everyone's doing it, why shouldn't I too? To, wow, most people aren't doing it, why should I? And it's an important piece because peer pressure is actually mostly self-pressure, right? As I'm sure Charlotte and Maddie and Kara and Lauren can attest to, it's not so much someone shaking a vape in your face going, come on, don't you want to do it? Don't you want to be cool, right? It's more just like, I think everyone's doing it, so I should too. But if you don't think everyone's doing it, if you realize that only 1/4 of your peers are doing it, then it changes the decision-making process in a really important way. I'm really glad you brought that up.
But recognizing that the data is 2 years old. Right, and so maybe some of your freshman feedback is within the last year, but if you just started this in spring of 2018, it's 2-year-old data.
But I've been doing that specific exercise with my freshmen for 15 years, and for every single healthy kid survey, for every single drug, you know, they consistently double the estimate of how many people are doing it. So
I will just say, anecdotally, I've definitely had conversations with my friends now in senior year about how there's a lot fewer drugs at break than we were led to believe in freshman year, and people warned us about. So I've also seen that.
Thanks, Matt.
Just going on some of the interventions for students, we're training peer health educators to develop workshops, and partnering specifically with Ira Sacknoff, 2B educator, and Jazzy Garrity from BACR and Coalition Connection to educate those peer health educators and advise us. Some of the other things that we're doing, school-wide poster campaigns, educating youth about the harmful effects of vaping, as well as where they can go to get support for dealing with that. We're having some of our health educators present to middle schoolers about vaping. It helps them hone their presentation skills as well as gets the word out to our incoming 9th graders. And then during our wellness events, vaping and tobacco-focused education games in the courtyard. Under development, we've been discussing a vape device buyback program. So we can use some of our grant funds for that. It would not be cash, it would be gift cards or meal tickets for that. Promoting a safe and confidential disposal program. So letting the kids know it's not about getting them in trouble, but getting those devices out of reach. Poster awareness campaigns. Almost done is a one-pager of cessation apps. So there are a lot of good apps out there to help with that. And a media awareness presentation, and that's being written in conjunction with Huckleberry. So what we found, just a quick footnote on that, is kids don't like to be duped. And so when they find that these big corporations have been targeting them, tricking them essentially into trying these things, our students aren't happy with that. Vape detectors, kind of closing out. Very quickly, I think everybody in the room knows the basics of this. Is they're electronic sensors that sense the chemicals from the vape devices and send an alert, some via Bluetooth, some via Wi-Fi, to the smartphones of select people on campus, such as administrators or campus supervisors, notifying them of the location so that they can investigate. The Central Maryland Police has a DOJ grant to provide vape detectors to local school districts. We have ordered 83 detectors for all 5 of our sites. That's the number of student bathrooms, in case anybody's playing trivia later, that we have on our campuses. Well done. Yeah, okay. I received an update from my contact at CMPA today, Lieutenant Jenna McVeigh. She is asking the DOJ for an extension. Some of the early vape detectors were not incredibly effective, easily thwarted, providing lots of false positives, so she is waiting and wants to pilot with us some of the kind of second generation vape detectors, and so we're just waiting on that.
Do we know when?
She didn't give a timeline, no. So the second generation, I mean, the downside, the second generation ones, they're about $1,000 a piece. So I'm sure that we won't get 83 of them, but we want to make sure that they work. And anecdotally, I would say that what I've heard from, I don't know if John has heard anything, from colleagues in schools where vape detectors are present, not to give out any secrets, but one quick spray of like spray paint or aerosol into the vape detector and it's rendered useless. They're very easily jammed or thwarted, and they're giving a lot of false positives of activity in whatever area they're in, as well as some anecdotal information that when kids know that the detectors are there, it encourages ghosting, which is holding the vapor in the lungs for a longer period of time until they leave the area, which just creates more damage to the lungs. So we're going to proceed with caution, but CMPA is committed to getting us those vape detectors, and we're more than willing to put those into use. Yeah.
I was just wondering, out of curiosity, with the vape detectors, especially at a campus like TAM where it's so spread out, and I was just thinking, I know we only have like two female administrators, and we have all male campus soups plus a AP in our principal. That like, how realistic is it? Like, I think we have 9 student bathrooms on campus, if I counted correctly. Like, it doesn't seem super feasible. Like, by the time you get the techs to run up 4 flights of stairs, like it wouldn't. Like, is there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that question is, but like.
No, I totally get it. TAM does present a unique set of challenges that the other schools don't have, just because of the layout of the physical plan. It would have to be. I hear what you're saying, and even on the most accessible campus or easily navigated, probably Redwood, since most of the classrooms are in one building, it's not going to be 100%. By the time somebody is notified to when they can go and check it out. My answer is not resignated. They would do the best they could.
Yeah.
And there's just some resources.
Thank you. Before I open it up for public comment, does anyone have any questions? We'll have a chance to comment and discuss after we hear public comment, but if you have any questions.
Wes, one of your things that you talk about is a poster awareness campaign, so I'm assuming posters are up and in hallways, or that's where we're working?
You guys see?
Because Redwood had a good one at the vaping dinner, or prevention of vaping dinner we went last year.
I've seen them in the bathrooms too, at Camstel and.
Our bathrooms are smothered in them.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, there's a lot of talk of like emphasis on like using social issues in ninth grade curriculum, but like through talking, we've discussed this issue in both leadership and TAM News that most of the time, like freshmen sometimes aren't the best. Like, is there any talk of using any of this grant money or any prevention measures in upperclassmen grades, or even just the 10th grade, where you're a little bit more exposed to the high school environment? Because social issues is like the first semester of high school where you don't kind of, as you were saying, understand who's doing what and what these things actually are.
That's a good question, and that fact, this doesn't directly answer your question, I'll try to get to that, is why when I came into this job, I moved the Healthy Kids Survey from the fall administration to a spring administration, because I thought our numbers would go up and that wouldn't look good in the short term, but it was a more realistic or robust, representative measure of what our ninth graders at least were experiencing. And so, John, have you talked about
I can speak to that element. It's a really interesting question. I think one of the hardest things logistically is as you get to the upper grades, as you all know, schedules tend to diversify a lot more. So it becomes harder to get to everyone, and I think Maddie, you were talking about the microaggressions presentation at Drake and how it makes so much more sense now that it's embedded in social issues where it has context, right? Same with the vaping presentation, right? It has context in social issues, it has relevance, and while it might be a more academic and kind of an abstract conversation to a group of kids for whom the majority hasn't been exposed to it yet, it's more preventative, which is one of the reasons why we're actually going into middle schools now too. Last spring, we presented at Hall Middle School, all their sixth graders. We're communicating now with Brian Lynch at Del Mar to see about presenting there as well. So I think the more prevention work we can do, we all know that the axiom, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So, but is there room to have discussions with the upper grades? Absolutely there is. But we don't know how that would work right now because we're, and just logistically, for example, my peer educator team is like 17. We expanded it this year because we're being asked to do so many different things. I think they would be excited to have conversations with sophomores or juniors, but there would have to be like a demand for it because with freshmen, you see freshmen, I mean, when you're a freshman and you have juniors and seniors coming to your classes, like, the messenger alone is enough to kind of get you to pay attention if they sound like they know what they're talking about. But if you're a junior talking to another junior, it's a very different equation. And it's something that we would absolutely be open to looking at and love feedback on, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Thank you. Any other questions before I open up for public comment? I want to make sure we hear from the community. Okay, so if you could stay, don't leave, but I'd now like to open it up for public comment on this particular agenda item. And if you'd like to make a comment, you can come up to the podium. I ask that you give us your name, and assuming you have not filled out one of these, we may please just enunciate so we can get the minutes correct. And you'll have up to 3 minutes to address the board with your comments concerning this agenda item. So are there any public comments? Yes, would you come on up? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Tempero. I'm a parent of 4 children in Mill Valley Public Schools, and I'm a veterinarian by profession with 25 years of experience.
One moment, please. Can you put the microphone a little closer to? Thank you.
I am here once again to just try and gain a little bit of traction with the district over the idea of scent dogs in the school district. More than 500 local parents, along with some key administrators, are supportive of exploring this idea, using friendly scent dogs on campus to help detect a variety of illegal substances, including nicotine and cannabis pods, edibles, other drugs, as well as firearms and explosives. Then let's just not dismiss the idea just because it's different. Please put aside any preconceived biases about scent dogs in schools and take the time to really read the details of this program that's been custom designed for our school district. This proposed scent dog program uses friendly Labradors and Spaniels, trained and handled by experienced civilians, not law enforcement. This program is not about criminalizing drugs on campus or detracting from the message that vaping is a mental health and addiction issue. We are advocating this civilian program be adopted as another tool to identify kids that are addicted to these dangerous substances and unable to break the cycle on their own. Get them into the educational programs that are already available at school. The intent of the program is to deter campus substance use and not harm the students' future prospects. So the consequences for students using these illegal substances during the school day will be exactly the same, whether they're detected by a teacher or by a dog. We all understand the importance of these in educational programs like wellness and TUHSD, but in veterinary medicine, we embrace the concept of multimodal pain control. We start with something simple, safe, like doggy aspirin. If that doesn't work, we don't just keep doubling the dose of the aspirin, but we add in new approaches. We combine different medications and we target different pathways. And so our approach to reducing vaping and campus drug use needs to mimic this rubric. Education, wellness, TUPE, restorative justice, and some deterrence as well. The synergistic effect of multiple approaches used simultaneously tends to result in the best possible outcome. TUPE and Wellness are doing an amazing job. But as Wes mentioned, we're still failing to detect the high numbers of students that are actively abusing on campus. Ideally, all students would self-refer themselves to wellness, but that's not the reality of addiction. And to expect that many of these kids will seek help on their own is also unrealistic. And this assumption means that schools do miss a critical window of time when the addiction can be addressed. Scent dogs provide a safety net for those students not ready to seek help. And the tragedy that unfolded in Italy this past summer, to me, emphasizes the need to help the kids before the consequences become irreversible. Posters in education, interventions, vape detectors, they're all essential, but they're not quite enough. Why wouldn't we at least consider other measures that does have a lot of support from our community? Human noses can no longer detect these substances or weapons in scent dogs' track.
Do you have someone else? Do you have someone else that can finish your statement?
I'm pretty much done.
Okay,
I
thank
just
you.
wanted to say all of you have a copy of the proposal and also the petition that was released into the community rapidly, more than 500 signatures within just a few days. So
Thank you very
consider.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this agenda item? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tanya Miller. I don't have much of a public comment other than to say I really support what Laura is talking about. I am one of the petition signers, along with then 499 others. The analogy, I see it as when our children were 4 years old, and I was educating my child relentlessly about their health and candy and artificial things. I would never have left a bowl of Skittles on the counter. I can educate him as much as I want, but his prefrontal cortex development at that age mimics now what it is in high school. It's really hard. You can have as much education as is possible, but when something is in front of you, it's much more tempting to try. I was just talking with a friend the other day whose child had had written her 7th grade paper on vaping and the risks and the dangers and all that. And within the first month of school, as a freshman, had tried vaping at school. It's tragic to me to hear that. It may only be 25% that's doing it, or maybe only 25% are reporting that they've tried it. How many of us have looked our children in the eyes and had them maybe not be completely honest with us before? I can't imagine that in a survey that everyone feels like they need to be upfront and honest. I think that a friendly deterrent is a great complement to education, to helping kids. If it's not on campus, it's way less tempting to try. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment before I return to the board for any discussion or clarifying questions as a follow-up? Okay, so this closes public comment on this agenda item. I have one question, but I'll open it up to fellow board members. So my question is actually for either one of you or both of you. So can you, we have heard from the community, and I am very impressed, thank you. It's gratifying to hear the, I want to say holistic, but I'm kind of tired of that word, just the well-rounded approach that the district has taken and the very thoughtful approach. But I am a little curious because it does seem, for me it seems common sense that we would include some sort of deterrent, but I guess we have it because we have our staff that patrols like they always have, but do you have any thoughts on that you want to share with the board, or is it either of you? Yeah, I'd like your opinion of whether you think we have enough deterrent in the school district, enough deterrence.
I think that's a difficult question to answer. I think we could always use more deterrence. My personal feeling, I guess it has generated a lot of discussion, and I think there are some very big issues with having drug dogs on campus. I think there are legitimate Fourth Amendment issues. I think there are issues with efficacy of drug deterrent or drug sniffing dogs on campus. I think there are cultural issues that would need to be addressed with the ease or the comfort of dogs on campus, especially in a deterrent role. I think that the potential for false positives and identifying students erroneously, I think that's fraught with some issues, and I think that would be especially salient in this community. I appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking, and it's not that drug sniffing dogs have never been tried, but we know also from ACLU challenges and case law that it is not without its pitfalls and liabilities to the district. I think that there's some issues related to the reliability with the latency of some of the vaping chemicals, some of the research I've done, lingering on clothes and shoes and everything from the environment, that a child would have no control over. So if they are in a car or they're in a home, as well as the multitude of different chemical compounds that are emitted during this. So I would say that it's a difficult question. It's not as easy as simply having a dog on campus. I think that once students know that the dogs are there to detect, the students will not. I think it'll only take one time, one student getting in trouble or referred to the office, and the students won't come back near that dog. We do regularly have comfort dogs in the wellness centers every couple weeks. I think that program would necessarily need to go away because I don't know that students would continue to trust the animals. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that I think it's an issue it's a proposal that's fraught with issues for the district if it was to move forward.
No, getting that feedback is really helpful because the board members, we received the proposal, and getting more of your thoughtful feedback is helpful because it was hard to understand what level of consideration had been taken into this alternative, for this alternative. And it'd be nice somehow, and I'm not suggesting anything right now, I want to give everyone a chance to think about it, but somehow to have some sort of feedback for the community members that have spent so much time on this so they understand what some of the issues are. It's always really hard when you put this much time and care into something and not get the feedback of where the proposal stands. And I know everyone has been looking at it, but I want to be able to help in any way. So, John, you want to add something?
Just a little bit. I think the logistical issues and the legal issues are far above my pay grade, but from a cultural standpoint, I can see a little bit from both sides. I think that the part of me that errs on the side of, if you're looking at the continuum of security versus freedom, right, which is this constant give and take, right? You have in theory, if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. And yet, I think that as soon as, while it may be an effective deterrent, we have to consider the cost in terms of the effect it has on school culture. And I'm not saying that I have a clear idea of what that would be. All I know is that if there's a sense of mistrust, if you get one false positive, and student faith in the program will disappear, is what I would guess. I'd be really interested to know what they have to say.
And I think that's what's helpful for me is to hear this is not simple, and just getting feedback on some of these other issues can help us move forward with the dialogue.
And I wonder if there's any other ways that we haven't looked at. For example, Cynthia, I think it was you who said something to the effect of it's harder to detect. now because it doesn't smell like cigarettes. Someone said something to that
Right.
effect, and I apologize if that wasn't. But we did a presentation.
I agree with that.
Right. We did a
Yeah, I said it, but
presentation
it's
to
okay.
our staff in January for what to look for physically, and and we had 50% of all the referrals that we got for intervention came in the 6-week period following that presentation because staff were more aware
Oh,
of
I
it.
see.
They knew what
Okay.
to look for.
Okay.
So there are other things we can do
Okay.
to improve this, as well as presenting to parent groups and staff groups.
That's helpful. Go ahead, Cynthia.
And thank you for the information, but also this would create a host of discipline issues. Putting false positives aside, it seems like the proposal wants the dogs to identify illegal substances in order to escort students to wellness. But once the illegal substance is discovered by virtue of our discipline matrix, that actually there's discipline that goes along with that, right? And so you can't have one or the other without changing the discipline system at the school. So that's a much broader discussion to have. And I think in one of the things it said the dogs also sniffed out ammunition and gunpowder and things like that. And so it seems like it was pitched as a vaping solution, but it's trying to be a catch-all, and the catch-all involves a lot of very serious offenses that would have to be disciplined and punished. And so then wonder about how effective the system is for just vaping. And I know, I mean, I've been a parent. Well, I am a parent, but. My parents are out of high school, or my children are out of high school. But I teach in high school also, and I understand the frustration and the fear that parents have about it. And I also understand that parents often look to the schools to really be the front runner in solving various problems for teens. And schools do have a role in it, but the family has a role too. And so I would love to see more parent education, maybe workshops, having kids who have suffered from some of these conditions, speaking to parents, right? Speaking to their peers about it, because I keep a running total on my whiteboard at school of the deaths, along with the statistic that 80% of the vaping or illness diagnoses are in humans or patients that are younger than 35 years old. And every single one of my students is checking that death total when they come in, and they've started talking about it. And so I think there's ways to get everyone talking about it. And I love dogs too, so I'm not opposed to dogs, but that would bring a whole host of issues in where the civilians are discovering material that then takes it into the discipline category, and they're not employees of the district, they're not school resource officers, they're not attendees on the campus attendance, and so I think that's a difficulty too.
Any other? Well, thank you, and thank you to the community members and parents that came. I do hope that we can continue this dialogue, because I think everyone wants the same thing, and the more we can work together, and I do really appreciate the feedback we've gotten on you explaining as well as the proposal. I thought was very interesting. So thank you. So we'll now move on. So let me put this here. We're going to be recessing to have the public hearing, and I'll give Mary a chance. Hold on. Oh, she's ready. Great. You have the. Okay. 1 moment, please. Okay, now we have recessed to hold a public hearing pursuant to Government Code Section 50077 on the issue of calling an election on March 3rd, 2020 to impose a qualified special tax, parcel tax, on all parcels in the district's boundaries. We will now provide time for public input to solicit feedback on the proposed parcel tax measure. So for this public hearing, each member that wishes to speak will have up to 3 minutes. It's a public hearing, and we are going to be very strict about the 3 minutes. It's all part of the public meeting requirements. So now I'd like to ask if we have any public comments for this hearing. I see one person that I recognize walking towards the podium. You'll need to put the microphone down quite a bit lower. I'm sorry. It's nice to see you.
Maybe you can go about.
Yeah.
Okay, I can stand on a chair. Thank you. It's very good to see all of you here and still seated. All those hours you put in for nothing. I want to thank you all for the commitment you've made, certainly over the past, I'd say 5 years, because all of this work, and so many of you here have done it already and are going to continue to do it. Thank you for putting yourselves out and the countless hours and the outreach that you are making to our community and to our parents to sustain one of the finest quality educations I know our daughter was able to have. We're so grateful that we were able to live here and participate in this community, particularly at the level of all the options our daughter was able to take advantage of in this district. And that as a career teacher and as a professional, that I was able to spend 40 years of my lifetime here working with our students, because this community has had vision and diligence to understand that we need 10 years of some sense of certainty about what our funding is going to be. We've got a lot of work to do politically, we know that, out there. But right here, I just want to remind us all that in the past, this community, as it just did recently, has supported our district and our children for years and years and years. I go back to 49 here. So I'm very grateful to all of you for the effort, and all of you behind me for the effort that you're going to be putting in to bring this resolution to the public to make a decision, to give us some feedback about that decision, so that those of you, and we've got everybody here who's so immensely talented and qualified to do this work, will be able to do it without the horror of the past 5 years of trying to cut and paste and slice and dice. 114 teachers who may not be here if this doesn't go through is a serious consequence to everyone's education. And that's not even counting all the other folks that support the teachers. We all know this. And I understand the concerns that people have, but we've got 10 years of our future, and this is local, and this is needed. And thank you, all of you, for making it at least a possibility to think about. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome. I'm just delighted to see you guys here. I think it's terrific. Thank you for your service. Pascal Sisich, I'm a district taxpayer, and I never thought I'd see the day when I'd come to one of your meetings, and I never thought I'd see the day when I actually post something you were going to do. That day's today, and here I am. I'm going to be opposing this measure. I'm going to be working to defeat this measure, and the first $190 check I write will be to the No campaign. Let me tell you why. I don't want you to think I'm just a naysayer, because that's not true. Over the years, I've spent no less, I'm sure, than tens of thousands of dollars supporting schools. Here's where I'm coming from on this. As you know, as you probably have gathered, there's real parcel tax fatigue. And my parcel tax, my tax bill has 15 different assessments and bonds. And I think that's what's happening in the county is people are getting totally gun shy. And I think there's a real fear that people are not going to be able to stay in this community. Mm-hmm. I think these tax measures have been floated by your agency as well as many others have been received well because this is an affluent community. But let me tell you, this is not an exclusively affluent community. The number of moderate and low-income homeowners and renters, and don't think this doesn't affect renters, this would create one more upward pressure on rents. You're going to be driving out, and I mean by you, I mean collectively, all the agencies that are insisting on using this funding source, there's no control over this funding source. There's no limitation, there's no control, there's no gatekeeper. So as long as you keep putting new measures out, you're going to have people that maybe they'll vote for this, I don't know. But I think people have reached the breaking point, and I think your polling may be, you know, I don't know if this will pass or not, but I don't think you're going to make it much past 66, whatever it is, 0.7%. Another thing I want to mention, and this may sound even more critical, so I apologize for it, but you have asked the property taxpayers for Measure B and then Measure J, and within a year, yet another measure. And if you look at the relationship of the two new parcel taxes to Measure B, it's 110%. What makes us know, what makes us think that you're not going to be coming up with recasting these measures again? These are supposed to be short-term parcel taxes. They're sold that way, and I think you and other agencies get people hooked on that. And then, well, we're already paying for it, let's just extend it. And I think that's disingenuous. Finally, I find it really misleading that when you talk about this proposed parcel tax, you're saying state mandates. Everybody knows what you're talking about, and yet I think you're hiding it from people. The reality you're floating, for me, my perception, and that's all that really counts when people go to the voting booths, is that you are backfilling the requirement to pay these unfunded state pensions by the use of parcel taxes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Would you like to make a public comment? Yes, please come to the podium. Thank you. And I believe, are you the gentleman that provided the yellow copy?
James
also?
Holmes, yes.
Thank you. So we have a copy from you.
Larkspur, Redwood class of 71, incidentally. My concern is with the, is not with the renewal, but with the $190 increase. I think that an increase of considerably less might be acceptable, but I really have 2 points. One perhaps is more in the nature of a question, and that is, at least according to the IJ, the board was very interested in the findings of its consultant that there would be a favorable response to the proposal that is being considered, including the increase. And my question would be, did the consultants consider the impact of bringing forth this proposal at the same time that there are 2 and possibly other 3 very substantial and possibly controversial taxes being proposed, one for SMART, one for a new fire bureaucracy, and possibly one for flood? It seems to me that there's a substantial difference and possibly a substantial lower degree of acceptability if a tax is proposed in conjunction with a great many others. And my second point is that this proposal, it's premised on an increase in enrollment, and an increase in enrollment presupposes an endlessly increasing rise in enrollment, and that is something that can't be assumed. History shows that enrollment rises and falls, and in fact, in some cases, we're seeing evidence that the trend is changing, and some districts at the elementary school level are increasingly talking about even closing the schools. In addition, the idea of increasing enrollment assumes that there's going to be an ever-increasing supply of affluent young parents willing to pay the inflated prices in the housing, and that too is questionable. In fact, in today's Chronicle, commenting on the high prices, it said, incomes in the Bay Area are very high. The unicorns, private companies with over $1 billion, are paying enormous amounts of money to engineers just out of school. I don't know how long that is going to last. Richard Green, director of the University of California, Lusk Center for Real Estate. I just think that it is very hard to support the concept of a long-term tax based on what could be a comparatively short-term enrollment measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Before you hit the timer, full disclosure, I'm a little visually impaired, so hopefully, and I have multiple sclerosis, so I have a little hard time speaking and Staying on point.
Can you, there we go, yeah.
So I ask for a little patience.
Absolutely. If you could first start by stating your name.
Lisa DeGennaro
Okay.
of Mill Valley. And I'm here to talk specifically about the parcel, per parcel. Pensions and all the other challenges are too broad for my 3 minutes. But I would like to just kind of be a face, sorry, I can't see you in those glasses, of somebody who's really impacted. There are people, as the other gentleman stated, that are not wealthy. In my case, I don't have my paycheck anymore, and I'm fighting to stay here. Sorry, I don't want to cry. I brought my tax bill from when I bought my house in '06. I bought it at the peak of the market, so it went down and then it came back up. So my current bill is really not benefiting by Prop 13. I'm at fair market. So in 2006, my share of school assessments and all the bonds and everything was $1,098. This year, it's $2,500. That $1,500 difference for me is a hot water heater. It's a new furnace. It's substantial. My neighbors across the street have a tax bill of $43,000 a year. My bill is $11,000. My percentage of my bill, of my mill rate for school assessments is almost 40%. Their percentage is like, we pay the same tax. Their house is a block-to-block lot. It's 6,000 square feet. There are 2 homes and 2 separate 2-car garages. We pay the same tax. Next door to me is a 3-unit multifamily house, apartment building. We pay the same tax. It's really hard when you're at the lower income. And I know a lot of people support these taxes. I support schools. That's not it. It's just, it's the equity of it. It's a regressive tax, it feels like. And for me, it's not sustainable. And I really don't want to move. So I'm not saying don't do it. I am saying push back on Newsom to get help for the pension funding. Get us to help you. But I'm going to be fighting this, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be a squeaky wheel. If I'm out in front of Whole Foods with a clipboard telling people, you know, because all these people that support the tax, they also support diverse and lower income homes. My home is 500 square feet. Let that sink in. It's really tiny. It's not as big as this room. It's the size of a garage. But yet I pay the same as the McMansions, and I don't have that budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Vogman. I live in San Anselmo. And as a district resident, I'm here to urge you to make a responsible, risk-averse decision that protects both the district and the broader community. TAM Union faces a fiscal cliff in June 2022. All your current parcel taxes expire then. If you go over the fiscal cliff, you will be forced, excuse me, to make draconian cuts to the budget, hurting students, staff, and the broader community. This risk should be considered with the utmost caution. You propose to add a $190 increase in the parcel tax to the ballot measure, renewing for 10 years the current $455 tax. Adding $190 to the renewal measure amplifies the prospect that voters reject the entire parcel tax. Your consultant's polling suggests that passage of a renewal with a $190 tax increase is a complete toss-up. November 2019 election results suggest voters are willing to renew taxes in the existing amounts but are rejecting newer and higher taxes. In Marin, 2 tax renewals without increases passed and 1 new tax failed. In San Mateo County, Cabrillo Schools' 0 increased parcel tax renewed passed easily, while Redwood City's $149 supplemental parcel tax failed, and that was failed today. Godby polling has shown 72% support for Redwood City's $149 increase. They found much lower support, 66.6%, for TAM Union's proposed $190 hike. Parcel taxes comprise 19% of your FY20 budgeted revenue. It is unwise to double down on the fiscal cliff risked by betting that this yes votes the yes votes will exceed your polling prediction. Clearly, the resolution you're voting on tonight is risky to the district, coming right after the latest $149 increase. It's also unaffordable, as we just heard, to many constituents you were elected to represent. Your most prudent option would be place a renewal measure with no increase on the March ballot. Take a closer look at the long-term financial picture. Then, only if district need and community support merit it, explore placing a supplemental parcel tax tied to building square footage on the ballot in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Effel. I live in Larkspur. I'm dismayed that I have not heard any discussion by this board of an alternative to the 190 increase. As the previous speakers pointed out, Godby's polling does not support a slam dunk for this increased tax. And you may be better off with some other alternative. As others have pointed out, there will be additional taxes on the same ballot, some of which will be not very popular with the voters, I'm assuming. The smart tax, the new fire tax. And I would think that this board should have been discussing what the alternatives are and whether no increase or a $90 increase versus this $190 increase would be in the best interest of the district. I'm also somewhat disappointed when I read the proposal. It says that none of this will be used to pay administrative salaries and benefits. Now, we all know that money is fungible. This is not something that sophisticated voters are going to miss. And I think it is not something you ought to be putting out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Philip Rice. I live in South Marin. Graduated from Redwood in 1975. I'm just adding a little precision to some of the comments that have been made with respect to how the parcel tax is going to flow. The initial parcel tax was adopted in 1989. That's the first increment. The next was voted in November of 2018. You're proposing to add another increment to that of $190, which will be voted on in March of 2020. Just looking at the numbers the way that I do, the differential in contribution rate associated with AB 1469 is about 10.5%. If I just take that, multiply it times the certificated and uncertificated salaries for teachers, I get to a differential for the contribution rate of about $5 million, 10.5% times $47.5 million. The proposed parcel tax, $190 times 31,875 parcels, which is from your recent bond prospectus for the refinancing in September of this year. Multiply that times the parcel tax, you get $6 million. So it sure looks like most of the parcel tax is going to go directly to this increase in contribution rates. And the problem with that I have is that I don't see anything being done to address the issue of the pension fund liability. And then just another comment with respect to the total student population and what you're seeing, which is an increase in high school level population. The overall population of the student body in Marin County has stayed roughly constant over the last 5 years at 33,000. And what you see is a partitioning of the student body that's moving through. So that then leads me to question why you need a 10-year horizon at all. Anyway, those are concerns that I have as a taxpayer in Marin County. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm
not sure if this microphone's working or not, but thank you for your time. I'll turn my card in a second. My name is Joe Rapp. I'm a resident in Greenbrier. Let me say at the outset, I totally support strong education. Everybody here in this room, I think, is on that page. However, I will tell you that I'm going to work as hard as I can to oppose this tax. I have an alternative proposal for you, which is to table this and do an exploratory committee to look at some alternatives, and I have one of those alternatives. But honestly, we are being taxed to death, and you've heard that already several times. I'm going to be working hard against this, but I have an alternative. It's hurting me financially, it's hurting our neighbors financially, and you've heard others. So I did a little bit of homework. I was looking to see, is our district spending too much money on students? And so with what little I could find, other districts around the country have what's called a Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR. I could not find a CAFR on either Kentfield or Tam Union. I don't know where it is. But I tried to find as much information as I could to see how much we're spending per student. And what I found was both Tam Union and Kent are spending nearly $17,000 per student. Okay, fine. How does that compare to other districts? Other districts around the nation are spending around $12,000. We are overspending. So having some financial background, I looked, well, what's going on? Well, it seems to me the answer, and here's my suggestion, is to consolidate school districts. There's too much duplication. If you eliminate that duplication, now you can hire more teachers, you can pay them more money. You don't have to pay all the administrators, and it's more efficient. So I would propose a Marin Independent School District. Eliminate the duplication. So I think I have a minute left. That, I think, is the big proposal. As I said, I will be opposing this. I don't think it's financially responsible, and you've heard that as well from other people, and I think that pretty much sums it up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Oh, appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bennett. I'm from Tiburon. I'm a parent of a Redwood student, and I just wanted to show support for the tax measure because it is important to have that long-term planning period of the 10 years in order for you guys to have some financial stability and know what you can do from year to year. The quality of the education that the students receive here is very high quality, and it helps draw people to the Marin community, which in turn also helps our property taxes and builds a strong community. And so I just wanted to quickly voice my support for the tax.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any other public comment on this for this hearing? Okay, I think I will close the public hearing in that case. So the hearing is now closed. We will now move on to item C, discuss and take action on resolution 19-6 for parcel tax. And we have Superintendent Tara Topier to present that to the board.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here tonight on this important event. I just want to give a brief overview before the board considers the resolution before you. Over the past 15 months, we as a district have gone from a projected deficit of $8.7 million to a balanced budget. We have done that with strong guidance from the board and sound fiscal management. It required making difficult decisions in order to reduce our expenditures by more than $5 million and show the community that we were in partnership with them. The effective fiscal management earned us a AAA rating from Moody's, which is only 18 other districts in the entire state have. In the past 15-month time period, that same 15-month time period, we have provided 25 budget updates publicly, held 7 fiscal advisory meetings, and including tonight, have discussed this potential partial tax renewal at 7 public board meetings since May of 2019. I have included information about this potential partial tax renewal in 2 newsletters, and we have provided voters with 2 mailers updating them on the state of the district. This parcel tax, if approved by the board and voters, will allow the TAM district to continue to provide excellent programming our community values while maintaining the board-approved reserve levels. I, along with William Tunick and Sabrina from TBWB and Corbett, are all here to answer any questions and make any clarifications the board may have.
Thank you. I'll open it up to any questions, clarifications by board members. Dan Oppenheim.
Just a quick comment. Hopefully it'll be quick, but it might be more than 3 minutes.
I think that's okay for you.
Privilege of your position.
I think that Tari just mentioned that we're one of the 18 districts with a AAA bond rating. I think that's the top 2% in the state. And what's interesting about that is that the other districts that have that rating have reserve levels of 25% or higher. At the end of the 2015-2016 school year, we reserve a level of 35%. We're 15% right now. And so if we think about that, we should be at a higher level and should work to rebuild that. There are a lot of things we can do. We need to attract and retain the great teachers that we have here who enable learning to occur in the schools. There are achievement gaps. We need to work to increase the achievement of all students. Some are being left behind right now, but could do more for everyone. And if we look throughout the Bay Area, there are some schools that are performing even better. And so for everyone, we'd like to improve the achievement. Yes, there are some costs that we're having to deal with, whether it's pensions, special ed costs, insurance. We have to deal with those. We'd like to have pension reform in Sacramento, but that's a Sacramento issue. And we'll work towards that, but it's not something we can control right now. Enrollment. Enrollment has crept up and is continuing to do so. If we look at what happened with the enrollment this fall, it was higher than what we would have expected based on feeder schools. Why is that? People recognize the quality of the schools and they move into the district for high school. It's not just coming from the feeder schools. And so if we think about affordability issues, well, won't people choose public schools rather than private schools? Probably so. So I think we have to consider that. Also, this is a basic aid district, and so the funding is not dependent on the enrollment tier. And so if we have an inevitable downturn at some point, we need to be prepared. If we think about the reserve levels, again, 15%, 2 months of a year, that's 17%. So we're less than 2 months here. So not so much of a cushion. And finally, if we think about the schools, good schools drive property values. And so while we don't want to pay $190 more, not supporting the schools means property values will fall by far more. So just think about that.
I thought you were starting to say something. No?
This is probably you can't necessarily answer it in one meeting even, but as it does relate to the state mandated costs, what is it that I guess the Marin County Office of Education is doing in order to, how are we making a voice, making a statement in Sacramento?
Our district, as all districts in the county, participate in something called the Joint Legislative Action Committee, and we work with our local legislative offices and in Sacramento, and we lobby. And for the last couple of years, the #1 issue that we have lobbied is pension reform. The pension increases, and we believe our students deserve, our teachers deserve a pension. This is what they've worked for. Teachers don't pay into Social Security. This is what they pay into. The pension increase disproportionately fell onto districts. So 70% of the increased cost of pensions is a district liability. And that we had no say in, and we can't just say, no, we're not going to do it. So we continue to lobby. I think some of our efforts were heard when Gavin Newsom made a small contribution. We're hoping in the future they'll continue to, but that's not right now what we're hearing out of Sacramento.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for that summary of, because I felt like we've talked about this issue for a long time, and I felt like that we were clear, or that it's not we, because many of us weren't on the board at that time, but the district was clear when the Measure J was out there that that was the first step, right? And that was to staunch the bleeding and to coalesce around making cuts, as you said, and that this was always going to be the next step in order to get the stability for the 10 years, and including, Dan touched on it with the enrollment, but so if enrollment's going down in the elementary schools, it takes 8 to 9 years to get to us. Our enrollment projection is still going to stay at a fairly high rate. So thank you for that summary, because that was helpful.
I do want to touch on the enrollment. I know that the district, oh gosh, I'm losing track of time, 4 years ago did a 10-year forecast for the enrollment for the very reason we could see the financial issues on the horizon because of the increasing enrollment, wanted at that time to look further out to determine whether we would have enough facility to house the students, and there was no point in building a new building if it was short-lived. And then the district repeated that demographic study again a few months ago, again to look at 10 years out. And can you please remind me, I know that there is a drop, but as I recall, it levels off. It doesn't go back to
so we have 2 more years of growth that we can predict based on our feeder schools. And then we have 3 years where we're relatively flat. So that's 5 years out, we're relatively flat. And then we do start to come down a little, 5, 6, 7, 8 years out. But it doesn't come back down to the levels we were at before we started growing. And our last projection showed that kinders are back up. So for us, 10 years felt like a reasonable amount of time, given that we know what our enrollment reasonably will be with the kids we're in, but that kinder heading back up could, so that means that, 8 or 9 years out, 10 years out, we could be looking at a different scenario again. And I think to someone's point, in the last couple of years, we have, Drake has had more than 100% cohort survival is what they call it, which means that more than 100% of the students who were enrolled in the feeder to Drake High School showed up. We have done residency audits. It is not, these people live in our district. These are families coming in from privates and moving into our community. And that has been a consistent pattern, particularly at Drake for the last couple of years. And then more recently at Redwood and Tam, they're getting closer to that 100 and 1 or 2 years over that 100% survival rate.
And I think then again, with a downturn, we have a greater propensity to attend public schools if we have any sort of downturn. So that's would drive higher enrollment again.
Any other clarifying questions or comments by the board member?
In terms of the document itself, I think there were just some slight changes to wording on there. That's.
Oh, the one thing I want to remind everyone is that the district staff did spend time looking at the square footage even, a few years ago, and it isn't something that is as clear as we would have liked. And even if the measure were to pass based on square footage, if it would be contested, that money would be not available to the district. So that would be devastating, especially since this is this is really a renewal plus an additional amount. So that's something we can't take lightly. It doesn't mean that we don't, right? Speaking for myself, I have the same concerns about any regressive parcel tax, but in terms of having the district take on that risk, I do not feel that I don't think that is prudent So I do want to make it clear that it's not something that we've taken lightly.
Also, I forget who it was, but a gentleman had made the comment that the money that we bring in is unchecked. I would assume that we'd have a citizen oversight committee.
Yes, the resolution has a citizens oversight committee that
Absolutely.
is there to ensure that we spend the money as was promised in the resolution.
Also, I think there was a gentleman that made note of having trouble finding the budget information, and so I don't know if he's still here, but, oh, there you are. So after the meeting, we can provide you with the link. Corbett, yeah, perfect. If Corbett, if you could meet with this gentleman, because I think it's really, yeah, he'll be able to help you provide all that information. Thank you.
So I think just slightly lower. So that, the last full paragraph there, talking about whereas just recently it's used over 10.4 million reserves and made ongoing cuts to accommodate increased enrollment, to get rid of the cuts because those aren't really consistent with dealing with higher enrollment, which is not consistent there.
I'm sorry, which paragraph?
Down.
From the bottom.
You're saying take away
Right.
the words to accommodate.
No, to get rid of the 5.8 million. So we did make those cuts, but those cuts were to deal with budget issues, not to accommodate increased enrollment.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see. So period after cuts.
Well, no, just get rid of the cut part, made it use our reserves to deal with the,
Or to do with what?
Period after, to accommodate increased student enrollment, and additionally made $5.8 million in ongoing cuts?
or it can be, despite 5.8 million in cuts, the district needed to use 10.4 million in reserves to accommodate the increased student enrollment.
Okay, it says the same thing there right now.
No, it's a very different meaning.
I'm having trouble following, I have to admit. Can someone read what we want to say? The district recently has used over 10.4 million in reserves.
To accommodate.
I would just say to accommodate student enrollment or increase student enrollment, the district has had to use $10.4 million in reserves and make $5.8 million in cuts, right? I mean, it says.
5.8 is an issue of the budget, it's not an issue of dealing with enrollment.
Well, the 10.4 is also an issue.
Yeah, the 10.4 was driven primarily by the enrollment and the associated costs.
That's just the spending versus cuts.
Let's see.
So
I see what you're saying, Dan.
Dan made a good
Okay, you're looking at a
suggestion.
budget. I see
Whereas
what you're saying.
despite
Okay.
having made $5.8 million in ongoing cuts,
The district needed to use over 10.4 million in
Yeah, there we
reserves.
go. Now I see. That's better. I understand now. Thank you.
And at the end of that, we just get rid of the, without the adjustments, district would have been at risk of insolvency. Now, we've got a superintendent, we've got a CFO, we've got finance staff, we've got a board. We wouldn't sort of just, it's like saying without using the brakes, we would have driven into a wall. We wouldn't have done so.
Yeah, that's true.
And we don't want to
Yeah.
pat ourselves on the back for doing what we should.
Yeah, right. Is everyone in agreement with that language change? I mean, I'm in agreement. Just want to make sure. Okay, good. And do you have that, Mary? Oh, yeah, and Dan can help you. He'll proof it for you after we do that. QC it, you capture it. Okay. Anything else?
I think then on page 7, there's that same comment. It's about because of exhausting resource and insolvency, I believe, on page 7.
sorry?
I think. It's
I think there's
long.
only, is it in the
Right in the
exhibit?
middle, right there. Third. Go up. That's third paragraph. Go down.
Exhibit B.
Right in the middle of that third paragraph.
So scroll down, so right, there's that, so there, the ending of therefore the district would have been risk of insolvency.
So that whole last sentence, then without these steps.
Well, you can leave it to 2021, I think it's just, I think, or yes, probably the last sentence could go.
Yeah, same sentence.
I see.
And in the next paragraph, in addition, our schools continue to face, rather than are facing, because I think continue to face suggests this is,
Right.
this has been
This has been
going.
going on for
this-
quite a while.
Yeah, this is not new.
William, do we have a word count for the Exhibit B? Can we make these kind of changes in Exhibit B? Just occurred to me.
Yes.
Thank you. You go sit down, Nora. Yeah.
Exhibit A is the only place.
Exhibit A. I just wanted to check, so I wasn't sure. Thanks. Thank you.
And I guess then, just to slight further changes, in the paragraph starting with, in addition, our schools are facing, that was, our schools are facing, the last sentence where it says we cannot rely on the state, and say 90% of our funding comes from property taxes, parcel taxes, and foundations, then, so we cannot rely on the state. And it's, we're getting very little from the state here, and I think just to reinforce that this is a truly community-funded district.
You want it before that last sentence.
Yeah.
So, William, I have a question, because it was something that someone brought up during comment. No funds can go to administrators' salaries or benefits. I recall that being a requirement. I thought we had to have this in here, because that was part of the, I thought that was part of the statute or something.
No, it's not a legal requirement. That's,
Okay.
But it's language, I think it's in your current measure.
Okay, so that's where, okay, okay, okay.
In that paragraph, sorry, a little more wordsmithing. So the measure blank will renew essential local funding to maintain quality education in our high schools. And to, every penny will stay in our district. I would like to say district instead of community. I think it's just a lot more.
Yeah, I think you're right. I agree with that too. Does everyone else agree?
And so do we remove that sentence, no funds can go to administrative salaries or benefits? Are you proposing that, Leslie?
No, it's more of a question.
Got it, okay.
Thank you for answering for me. You were right, so we've been sitting next to each other too long. Okay.
And then the last thing, I think the paragraph, the district's financial management, Moody's Investors Service, I believe with capital I and a capital S on that, just to,
Up here?
yes, just to make sure it's correct. I don't think it's correct.
Oh, capital I and capital S.
And I think it should be Investors
Yeah.
Service.
Service, not services.
So Investors plural, service singular.
Yeah.
I have another one. So going to the next page where we have 6 or 7 bullet points there. I feel like a bullet point should be added that speaks to wellness. And maybe this is a question for Sabrina, but I know that it is a big concern of our greater community, not just our parent community. You know, there was a nice turnout for the vaping tonight, and just to educate and just put it in there to let people know that we're,
How to poll.
Yeah, that's the
let's
thing.
see how we poll.
I don't
It
think.
wasn't at the top polling.
okay.
But
That doesn't mean you can't include it.
put it in.
Well, student trustees, what do you think? I mean, did you hear my statement, or were you busy doing something else?
We're actually busy discussing something within the document.
I'm kidding, I'm teasing you. But my point is...
Well, we also have a comment, but we can do this after.
Well, but my point is that there's 5 or 6 points, you can see, bullet points, and none of them address wellness.
Those were pulled straight from the polling.
Okay.
Which is why they're...
Okay.
And so these would be the priorities from this parcel tax based on what we heard from the community.
Okay.
So wellness would have to come from another resource.
I think the trustees have...
Did you have something, though?
I think it's page 7, the terms, there's a question mark at the end, and we don't know if it's supposed to be there. Right there. It goes
On the very bottom of that page.
It's part of it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it's a
Long question, yes, okay.
We want to make sure.
I just have a clarifying question. Why has the district decided to raise the parcel tax with the renewal?
For all the reasons that was said, that,
Yeah.
to maintain quality education, to balance the budget, moving forward with continued rising costs and pension costs.
Any other comments or requests, suggestions for revisions to the resolution before I ask for a motion?
I have another one.
Okay.
And this is for Corbett. What if we didn't have the 3% COLA, annual COLA?
So the 3% annual COLA was put in to adjust for inflation. The idea being that over the course of 10 years, inflation compounds, and we want to make sure that the value of the service provided, as outlined in the measure, are maintained and not lessened in terms of eaten away by inflation. 3% is something that we've looked at, that we've had historically in the district for, I believe, since 1989. It is inflation in the last 5-10 years has been relatively low in the mid 2s, upper 3s, but has been 4 or 5% as well. Neighboring districts have had higher built-in inflationary numbers, as high as 5%, 6%, many others at 3%. And all the modeling we've done for the $190 increase, which is strictly driven financially, to maintain a balanced budget, to maintain our programming, to prevent further cuts, all the things that we built in were built around that 3% piece for those reasons.
I think 3% is pretty standard. I think when Kentfield saw a challenge in 2016, that was a 6%, and Mill Valley's at the same time was a 5%, which still passed. But 3% is fairly standard.
In San Rafael, it's still 5%.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other comments from the trustees or student trustees? So can I ask for a motion to take action on Resolution 19-6 for parcel tax?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this is a roll call vote.
All right, Ms. Lovica,
Aye.
Mr. Saavedra,
Aye.
Mr. Oppenheim,
Aye.
Ms. Ronick,
Aye.
and Ms. Carlender.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. And
Should we do a trustee?
you know, you are so right. This is one of those occasions. Thank you for reminding me. Mary, we'd like to take a preferential vote for the student trustees, and it'll be a roll call.
Okay. Ms. Steele? Aye. Ms. Nixie? Aye. Ms. Ford? Ford.
Yeah, we.
Abstain. And Ms. Pearson? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good. Okay, so now we'll move on to discuss meeting for a mission statement workshop. So this is not to discuss the mission statement, but we know we're reaching that time of year where we want to, because it's been several years, and as well as, yeah, well, what do you know? Another 10-year milestone there. Yeah. So Tara, is this your agenda item, or are we just going to really figure out when we're going to do this?
I think we talked about this briefly in the governance workshop, and so I wanted to bring it to the board to have a public discussion. I think this, I believe, I don't know, but I believe this board has a strong vision for our district that I think should be reflected in a mission and vision statement. The mission and vision statement that we currently have is 10 years old. I believe that our values have shifted, and the focus of our work is adjusted. And I think this was a good time to revisit those. So I have some suggestions too, but I don't know how y'all feel about that. I was thinking.
Go for it.
Also, one more piece of context. You know, we are in the LCAP renewal year, and we're really taking a strong look at equity. And I think it would really help ground the fruition of that work if this board drafted a mission statement to help guide that work a little more directly. So I was thinking it might be nice to do it in a workshop style, not try to do it in a regular board meeting where you're all trying to do business of the district, where you can just take the time to focus on just mission and vision work. And I don't know if it seems like Tuesday nights work for you guys, or y'all, so I thought maybe we, like January 7th or January 21st are both Tuesday nights, or the off nights of the board. I know that means you have 3 in a row, which we all get to spend time together, which I know we really want to do on Tuesday nights.
So let's do it December.
Yeah, let's do Christmas Eve. Or you could choose to do it on like a Saturday morning if you wanted to, if that was better for people. But I just wanted to bring it up so you would have an opportunity to discuss it in public and provide any thoughts.
I like the idea of having it Tuesday. Before making a commitment, I do need to check my travel schedule, so for work, but maybe we could let you know what dates work. We could each individually let Tara know.
You said the 7th or the
21st.
21.
Yes.
Both work for me.
Okay.
I'd prefer the 7th.
Seven. Wow.
Okay, fingers crossed. I will.
It is a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, I'm excited. Sorry.
Hopefully that works.
I'm really geeking out.
And how long do we think?
I would ask for 3 hours.
Okay.
I would say we can, if possible, start at 5, if people can do that. I don't know if people can.
Well, we usually start at 5 anyway, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Do people want to start earlier, or is 5 good? 5.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, now move on to discuss the annual organizational meeting, which is now going to be December 17th. And I think the way we did it last time was that we did it backwards, that Cynthia pointed out, and you were correct on that. We went through the I'll call it the committee assignments, and then we did the president and the clerk, and that made it a little bit hard to know how we would move forward, how busy people would be. So this time we'll do president and clerk first, and then we'll go through the committee assignments. But Karen, your position will not change. We want to keep the consistency for the student trustee liaison throughout the school year. And I think last time we went through the job descriptions, so to speak, and people let other board members know if they were willing and able and interested in serving in whatever given role, and we went from there. But does anyone have suggestions how, if we do that differently this time, or if we speak up earlier? Does anyone have any? That's the only way I've done it since being on this board, but with Kentfield, maybe you did it a different way that worked better, or any thoughts?
Well, no, I mean, we expressed, people expressed interest if they wanted to serve as president or clerk, and then we expressed interest in committees. I feel like we just discussed committees.
We did when Karen came on,
okay.
so yeah, so we'll, it may be that we just keep them the same.
Right. So one thing I did want to, does anyone want to be president or clerk? Okay. So, well, we got that out of the way.
The camera wasn't on me when you asked.
One thing that I was talking about, I mean, because Leslie's been president for 2 years, and then I've been clerk, and so might see that as naturally nominating myself or being nominated for president. But I do think that the president has to have, or ideally, right, it depends who's on the board, would have the availability if something came up to come down for an hour or be available to the press or something like that. And that's my one hesitation, because teaching is an unyielding job as far as that goes, and I don't teach in the district. So, I was talking with Leslie, and I had asked her, because I think I enjoy being clerk, and I think have been able to give some guidance and work as a team on that. And so I had asked whether Leslie would be willing to serve another year if we took because we have in our bylaws, it says no board member shall serve more than 2 consecutive years in the same office. So we would have to amend the bylaw and take that out. And in Kentfield, we didn't have a time limitation, so it's not required by the ed code. And it worked well there when we had a good president and clerk to have them working for a couple of years together. So just putting that out there as a thought. If people are interested in that, we would have to amend. We'd put the bylaw on the December 10th agenda for first reading, I suppose, with that amendment, approve it before we elect the president and clerk at the December 17th meeting, I think.
How many years do you now? That would be 2, and then that would be a 3rd.
Right, right. So you have 2 weeks for a coup if you change your mind.
Well, and one other justification I had for it, or that we were talking about, suggestion I said, is that we're in the middle of the parcel tax right now, and so Leslie has been we have trustees that are working with the committee, but now on their own time. But Leslie's been the point person for that, so.
I definitely support that. I think having you continue and keep the natural flow of things would be amazing.
Great. No, I'm happy to do it.
Us 3 yahoos over here don't have the experience that you do either.
I wouldn't call you yahoos, but I kind of like the ring of that.
Then why do you sit us at the kiddie table?
I'm all by myself.
Oh, yeah, she's there.
That's a kiddie table.
Yeah.
Okay, well, obviously, we're not taking action, and again, if anyone changes their mind, you've got 2 weeks, but we'll put this on as an item at the next meeting, at the December meeting.
But then put it on for even if something changes before the 17th, put it on for the 10th, have flexibility for the 17th.
Yeah.
So if we call an audible, do it, whatever.
Well, yeah, I think we have to
Right,
change it
right.
before the 17th.
Right, no, I'm saying, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
It's just
okay.
I think we're all saying the exact same thing. So we would bring it to December 10th.
Yes, yeah.
Whatever that meeting is, okay.
Yeah.
Right, I just had it, yeah, so that the bylaw could be changed, because we
Yeah.
always have 2 readings before we change something. We have a first and a final reading. when we're done.
Of course, we could, yeah.
It works. But it works,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So I think we're down the finish line here for this evening's meeting. Now we move on to the superintendent's report. And I assume there's no public comment on the organizational meeting or on, I'm losing track of my place here, or of the discussion about the mission statement. Okay, no public comment.
I don't really have anything to say other than just want to give a shout out to all the sports teams who just did amazing. This was the fall season for TAM District and the TAM High volleyball team in particular who, I think showed us the definition of perseverance and grit and went farther than anyone thought they could. And I think it was just a great showing and a lot of school spirit out there at all 3 of our sites around various MCAL and NCSS playoff games, and it's great to be able to celebrate our students. So,
yeah.
Just adding to that, the Redwood High School varsity football team won MCAL for the first time in 13 years? Was it 16? A long time. Yeah, pretty cool.
And they won the first round of their playoff game up in Napa. Did you finish that?
No, they did not win.
Oh, they lost. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
The other one.
You would have known that if you had come home with me that night.
Any other items board members would like to share with other trustees?
So I would actually just like to ask where everyone from the district was for the TAM Alameda volleyball game, because I was there. Who were you rooting for? I wore an Alameda sweatshirt and a blue Patagonia. And stood between the bleachers,
Very good,
right?
very
And
good.
talked to it. It was actually it was cute. There was a TAM dad, who had a daughter on the team, and he was sweating. He's like, this is so nerve-wracking. I said, it's almost like you're out there playing the game. But it was a very exciting match. Went 5 games, and TAM did an outstanding job.
Wonderful.
I was at an AVRID workshop with JC, so we were watching via Twitter.
Oh, fun.
They lost tonight.
Yeah, they lost.
Did they?
Oh, that's too
Yeah,
bad.
they lost to Aptos, but it was a heck of a run.
So nothing else to share? I know I don't think I have anything. Oh, you do. Go ahead.
I do, and some of you already know this, but we've lost another TAM Union High School District graduate on Sunday. Someone that, a young man that attended Redwood High School for his freshman and sophomore year, was elsewhere for his junior year, and then eventually graduated from TAM High School in June of just this year.
Oh, no.
Accidentally overdosed. He took what he thought was some sort of pill, and it was laced with fentanyl. And
Oh, no. I didn't know that.
and he died,
Oh, what a
unfortunately.
shame. How tragic.
Yeah, and the parents found out via social media
Oh, no. Oh, no.
because he's over 18 and he was up at Sonoma State, and Sonoma State did not. They went through the protocol and reached out to the Marin County Police, and they were either backed up or whatever, but they didn't get to the parents until 5 hours after it actually happened. And so they found out via social media. So, but the sad thing is that fentanyl and drugs and access and dirty drugs, they're still taking way too many of our young people, and I'm just devastated.
That is devastating.
19, yes, I said 2020, I'm sorry, 2019.
Oh, it's tragic. Very tragic. Well, I appreciate you letting us know. So now I'll move on to the last agenda item before we have a review of the meeting, and that is, do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay. Okay, so now, I think it was, were you the one that did the, glows and grows or whatever? Oh, I can't get it right.
Let's see. I thought everyone we came prepared, trustees, presenters, right, very informative on the baking, the parcel tax review, and I think also focus on the best interest of all students, as we always
Right,
do.
yeah.
So.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's 8:30. Please drive safe, and we'll see you all again soon.